Hi, welcome to Art and Stories. I want to thank Ohioana for inviting me to come read stories with you and draw some pictures. My name is Jeffrey Ebbeler. I'm an author and an illustrator. I illustrate chapter books. I do a comic series. And I've written and illustrated a bunch of picture books. Today, we're going to be reading a story called A Giant Mess. I forgot the book. I'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jack the Giant.
You're too close to the camera. Back up.
Hi, I'm Jack the Giant. I do a comic series. I illustrate chapter books. And I've written and illustrated a bunch of picture books.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have. Okay, start the intro.
Look, I'm in the intro.
Okay, I found the book. Wait, what? We already did the intro? Oh, well. Well, I'm going to read you the story now, but stick around because after that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came up with the idea for the story, and then we're going to draw Jack the Giant. So let's get started reading A Giant Mess. So our story starts off with a picture of the town that the little girl Molly lives in. So you can see on this page, Molly is asking us to come play with her. Up in the top, she says,
Do you want to play?
and then she's digging through her box of toys, and she says,
Come see my toys. I like this one.
now Molly has pulled out some of her stuffed animals, like she's showing us her fat cat,
Hello, fat cat.
and she's saying,
Hello, hog.
but then we can see that her mom is calling from outside the room. Her mom is saying,
Molly, did you pick up your room?
but she hasn't cleaned up her toys, has she? She's got a big mess of toys all around her room now. So then Molly's mom comes into the room and she sees the huge mess all over the place and she says, Molly, this is a giant mess. And Molly does a lot of the stuff that my kids used to do when they were little and they made a big mess and didn't want to clean up. First, they say,
But I want to play.
and then Molly gets all angry and has a little tantrum and says,
I will not.
and then she pretends like she's too tired, like, oh, it's so much work to clean up these toys.
This is too hard.
And finally, she just asks her mom for help because she doesn't want to do it herself.
Mom!
So Molly's mom is fed up. She says, this is your mess, Molly. You must pick it up. But Molly, she doesn't want to clean up her room. So you can see at first she tries to get the dog to do it. And then she's just kind of sad. She's pouting. She doesn't want to clean up her room. But in the background, we can hear a sound coming, can't we? There's a boom, boom. And then Molly looks out her bedroom window, and what does she see? She sees a giant foot coming towards her house. Can you imagine if you saw a foot the size of your house coming towards you? That'd be pretty scary, right? And so now Jack the Giant has come to town, and you can see he's running through the city, and his parents are off in the background. They're setting up a picnic. And you can imagine if you were a giant and you came to a town, everything would kind of look like the toys that you probably have. There would be little people and little cars and little animals and little buildings, probably a lot like the toys you already have. And so Jack is going to go around and he's going to scoop up all the things that he wants to play with, like the animals at the zoo or a plane at the airport. And then we can see a giant eyeball looking into Molly's house. Then we hear a crack, and you can see that Molly and her mom are looking up. And next, you can see a giant hand reaching into Molly's house. And Jack the Giant scoops Molly up and says, I like this one best, because he thinks that Molly is a toy, right? Then Jack is going to go around the city and find other toys to play with. And so he's going to go to an apartment building and reach in, and you can see there's a guy who just got out of the shower and he's wearing a towel and he's brushing his hair, and Jack's going to reach in and grab that guy. And he's like, these are the best toys. This was one of my favorite pages to work on because every window looks into a different apartment. So you can see some people are watching TV or playing musical instruments or dancing or even sleeping. And so Jack has gathered up a whole bunch of toys that he wants to play with. And he's got Molly and the plane and the giraffe from the zoo. And he's going to put them all together with the man in the towel. And he's going to climb up onto the highest building in town. And he's going to zoom him around in a plane. And Molly, of course, is saying,
I am not a toy.
but Jack doesn't notice. He's going vroom, flying the plane all over the town. And you can see a close-up of them in the plane. And Molly's yelling,
Stop!
So the next thing that Jack is going to do is something that I bet you guys do a lot with your toys. He's going to make little setups. So he's going to pretend that Molly is a princess. He's going to put her on top of a tower and put a little traffic cone on her head. And he's going to make Molly say, help me. And then he's going to take the digger machine and he's going to pretend that that is a dragon. And then he's going to take the man in the towel and pretend that that man is a knight. And he's going to say, I will save you. And he puts him on top of a giraffe and puts a bucket on his head and pretends that he's a knight. But while Jack is playing, his parents have gotten the picnic ready. And so Jack's mom is yelling, Jack, pick up your toys. And Jack looks up, but he's not ready to stop playing yet, is he? So Jack is going to do a lot of things that Molly did at the beginning of the book. Jack's mom is going to say, Jack! And Jack is going to say, but I want to play. And then he's going to say, I will not, because he doesn't want to clean up. But his dad is going to say, yes, you will. Have your parents ever asked you to clean up your room, and instead of cleaning things up and putting them away where they're supposed to go, you kind of shove things under the bed or try to hide things in the closet and hope that your parents don't notice? Well, that's kind of what Jack is doing here. He's picking up all the stuff that he was playing with and hiding them inside buildings. He's pulling up the grass in the park and kind of shoving some cars underneath. And Jack, he thinks he's done a good job. He's got his arms crossed. He says, done. But Molly looks around and sees all of the mess that's still there. There's animals and cars up on top of buildings. Jack has taken all of the animals from the zoo and hidden them in one store. You can't have a lion and a bunch of other animals in the same store together. That wouldn't be good. And so Molly, she has to tell Jack that he hasn't finished yet, right? So first she's going to say stop. But Molly is so small that Jack can't hear her. So she's going to run after him saying stop. But Jack's just walking away thinking he did a good job. So Molly is going to climb to the top of a tall bridge and yell as loud as she can.
Stop! This is a giant mess.
And finally, Jack hears her. So Molly tells Jack the Giant, this is your mess. You must clean it up. And then she shows Jack all the things that he needs to clean up. She says, that, them, those. So Jack, he thinks that he's done a good job. He says, am I done? But Molly looks around and she sees all the mess that's still there. And she says, not yet, because Jack didn't really do a very good job cleaning up, did he? But Jack's mom calls. She says, Jack, come here now. And so Jack says, I've got to go. And Molly looks around and she says, you're not done. So Molly sees Jack running off to be with his parents. And she realizes that she hasn't seen her mom in a while. So she looks around and she's kind of sad. But then she sees her mom off in the distance and they run towards each other and they have a big hug. And Molly looks around at the big mess that her house is. And she says to her mom, can I help? And her mom says, you can pick up your room, which is what she was supposed to do in the first place, right? But when Molly opens the door to her room, she sees that Jack has stuffed her room with all kinds of stuff, like the man and the airplane and the giraffe. And of course, she's going to need help after all. So she turns and says, Mom, can you help? If you haven't guessed already, I came up with the idea for this story because my daughters, when they were little, used to make big messes in their room. And there was one day I remember walking into their room and seeing piles of toys everywhere and saying, "Ugh, this is a giant mess." And I remember thinking, oh, that might be an interesting idea for a story. So the first thing I do when I come up with an idea for a story is I start figuring out how I want to make the characters look. So I'll do some little sketches. And this is the very first sketch I did of Jack the Giant and Molly the little girl. The next thing I like to do after I figured out how I want the characters to look is I want to figure out how to draw all of the different scenes. And so I do little tiny sketches about this size just to kind of figure out how I want every scene in the book to look. Those are called thumbnails. Now, I was trying to think of all the ways that I wanted to have Jack the Giant play with all of the things in the town. And I was thinking about different movies and TV shows that I had seen where monsters come to a town and they wreck the town and they play with it in lots of different ways. I was thinking about cartoons like Teen Titans or Powerpuff Girls. I was also thinking about monster movies like Godzilla or maybe even King Kong. So this is a scene from one of the King Kong movies where King Kong climbs up to the top of the tallest building in New York, and there's all kinds of planes flying around him. And I knew I wanted a scene in this book that looked just like that. So this is the picture I did, starting off with a little sketch. Now, when I've got all of my little thumbnail sketches figured out, I'll take those little sketches and I'll turn them into bigger drawings, more finished drawings, kind of like this. So you can see this is the finished drawing of the same scene where Jack is on top of the building playing with the plane. A Giant Mess is a little bit different than some of the other picture books I've worked on. Instead of making the illustrations with paint on paper, I drew everything and colored everything in right on my iPad with a pen tool, so it's all done digitally. So you can see here, I took my sketch and then I added in all of the line work. And then, after I have all the line work finished, I gradually added in some flat color. And then, along with that, I added in some shading and some highlights on top of it. And so this is how the final artwork turned out. One of the great things about making art on a computer is how easy it is to change things. If you think about when you're making a painting, if you don't like a color that you added or you don't like the way something looks, it takes a long time to repaint that thing. But on a computer, it can be very easy to change things around to make things look different ways very quickly. So this is a shot of my iPad screen, and you can see here's the image where Jack is opening up the roof and pulling Molly out of her house. And you can see how I'm building this image, starting with the sketch, and then adding the line work and the color. And so after I've got all that together, say I don't like something. Say maybe I don't like the color of Jack's shirt. Well, if I were doing a painting, I would have to repaint that whole shirt. But on my iPad, I can just go in and say, well, maybe I want to make Jack's shirt have a checkerboard pattern instead of being blue. What would that look like? And I can just pop it in and see what it looks like. But that's kind of silly looking. I can also go in and change the colors to make them look maybe more blue or more red or more light or more dark. And sometimes it looks weird, but sometimes I find some colors that I never would have thought to use on my own, but actually end up looking really good. Now, is everybody ready to draw Jack the Giant with me? Get out your pencil and paper, and let's start. So the first thing that we're going to draw is Jack's face, and we're going to draw two eyes. We're going to draw one circle, and then another circle, and then in the middle, we're going to draw two eyeballs. Now next, in between the eyes, we're going to draw Jack's nose. All that is a U shape right between the two eyes. Next, we're going to give Jack a mouth, and that's just a curved line that goes under his nose. Now, Jack's kind of goofy. He's got a big wide open mouth, so we're going to draw a big letter U and two little curved smile lines on the edge of his mouth and some teeth. Now, one of my favorite things about Jack is his big bushy eyebrows, and all that is a squiggly line in the shape of an M over his eyes. Next, we're going to draw the shape of Jack's head, which is just a big upside-down U. Then we're going to give Jack some ears. Those are just two half circles, one on each side of his head. And we'll draw a line underneath for his chin. Now, Jack's body is basically just a big square. So you can draw two lines going straight down and then a line across at the bottom. Next, we'll draw Jack's legs. And all that is two squares at the bottom, just like that. And then we're going to draw Jack's toes because he has bare feet. All you do there is a bunch of little curlicues. Starting from the left, we'll draw 4 curlicues and then a circle for the big toe. And for the other foot, we'll draw a circle for the big toe and 4 more little curlicues. Next, we'll draw Jack's arms. And all that is a diagonal rectangle on one side, and then a diagonal rectangle on the other side. Now Jack wears a big oversized sweater, so only the tips of his fingers stick out from his sleeves, and those are just some little curlicues, a lot like the toes. So that's a pretty good start, but the next step is adding in lots of little details to start to bring Jack to life. Jack has stripes on his shirt, so just like his eyebrows, you can do some zigzag lines across his arms and his chest. The more details you add, the better the drawing is going to look. Now I'm going to use my iPad to add in a little bit of color. You can do that with markers or crayons or whatever you have to color with. We're going to give Jack a green face and a blue shirt, and we're going to give him some red pants. Then we can make his mouth red and make sure that his eyeballs are white. The next thing that every good drawing needs is a background. And since Jack walks around the city making a big mess, how about we draw a skyline behind him? You can do that real easily by just drawing some stair-step shapes. We'll draw different apartment buildings, maybe a tower with a light on top. And then after you've drawn those stair-step shapes, then you draw some squares to make windows. Next, let's give Jack some ground to stand on. We'll draw a straight line across the paper at his feet. Then maybe some lines underneath for some shadow. And finally, let's draw a little guy in the corner who's scared of Jack so we can show how big Jack is. And we can draw his face and his hair, maybe an arm pointing up at Jack. We'll draw his body, his other arm, and his legs and his feet. And then we could draw a little word bubble where the man is yelling, "Giant!" And there you go. That is how to draw Jack the Giant. I want to thank Ohioana for inviting me to read stories and draw pictures with you today. And if you're a teacher or librarian and you're looking for an author illustrator to do school presentations, please keep me in mind and visit my website, jeffillustration.com. Thank you.
Do you want to see my toys? This one is my favorite. And this one? And this one? Molly, this is a giant mess. You must clean it up. But I don't want to.
It's a tale about a giant.
I like to read comics, you should try it.
If you want to know how it
And you have to buy it. It's a giant mess. It's a giant mess. It's a giant mess. It's a giant